This video is going to be about solving rational equations. And so when we solve rational equations, there's two situations that we look at. So the first situation, situation number one, we'll call it, is when you have a proportion. And so you may have seen problems like this in your past math classes where you have a fraction equal to another fraction. So 9 over 3x equals 4 over x plus 2. And in problems like this where you have a fraction equal to a fraction, we're accustomed to using kind of the process of cross multiplication. So when you cross multiply, you're going to multiply the first denominator by the other numerator. So that'll give us 12x. And you'll multiply the other denominator by the other numerator. And you'll set that equal to, and you're going to distribute. So 9x plus 18. And so then you can solve for x. And you should be able to solve for x given that it's a linear equation. So we'll subtract the 9x to get the x's on one side. So we'll have 3x equals 18 divided by 3, and the x equals 6. Now in rational equations, no matter what kind of situation we're in this video, what you need to do is you need to check for extraneous solutions. So you need to check your answer. And maybe you're wondering what I mean by that. In math, you're not allowed to divide by 0. So when you look at the denominators here and here, if you have an x value, if your x value were to make the denominator equal 0, then you wouldn't be able to use that as a solution, because one of the rules of mathematics is you're not allowed to divide by 0. It just doesn't make sense. So if you look at this denominator, when does this denominator equal 0? That would be at -2. So we don't want x to equal -2 because -2 plus 2 is 0. So x isn't -2, so we're looking good there. And over here, 3 times what number would be 0? Well, that would be 0. So we don't want x to equal 0 either. So as long as x doesn't equal 0 and -2, then we're okay. So seems like we're okay, so we'll do as every good math student does and boxes their solution or circles their solution. But you're going to have to check your answer at some point. So let's just try try one. Here we go. So you have, say, let's have, for the second one, let's use -2 over x minus 1 equals 8 over x plus 1. So when you look at this, let's just, in the very beginning, practice what I just talked about. Looking at each denominator, what can x not equal? We'd say x can't equal +1 from the first denominator, and then we would say x can't equal -1 from the second denominator. So x can't equal plus or minus 1. Alright, so now you can cross multiply, and in the end, if we get 1 or -1, we'll cross it off and say it's not a solution. So we'll have multiplying 8 times x minus 1, which is 8x minus 8, and we'll multiply, right, x plus 1 times -2, which would equal -2x minus 2, and time to solve. So we add 2x, whoops, gives us 10x minus 8 equals -8, or excuse me, -2. We'll add 8. So now I have 10x equals 6, and I'm going to divide by 10, so x is going to equal 6 over 10, and we'll reduce that to x equaling 3 over 5, which isn't 1 or -1, so you're good. That's your answer. All right, on to the second one. Let's try the second situation here. So situation number 2, all right. Situation number 2 is going to be when we multiply by the least common denominator. So the second way to solve these things is to take a look at a problem like this. So say it's x over x plus 3 plus 1 over x equals 3 over x. So now that there's multiple fractions on the left side, you have x over x plus 3 plus 1 over x. Cross multiplying can't happen. So the way that we've been solving them in my class is that we multiply by the least common denominator, and what it does is it clears the fractions. So we're going to try to clear the fractions. Since nobody likes fractions, we want to get rid of them, and so we're going to clear the fractions. So how do you clear the fractions? Well, you think about what the least common denominator would be. So if I were to take a look at this problem, I would say if I really wanted to add these two fractions on the left side together, I'd have to have an x plus 3 and an x as part of my denominator. And so what we're going to multiply by is our LCD in this problem is going to be x times x plus 3. And you're going to keep it factored. Don't multiply it out, because then it'll help you reduce much easier if you leave it factored. I guess before we start, we should say what x can't equal. So I'll say x can't equal -3 and x can't equal 0, because those would make the denominator equal 0. Alright, here we go. Time to multiply by the least common denominator. So we said the least common denominator is x times x plus 3, and we're going to multiply by that, x over x plus 3 plus 1 over x equals 3 over x. And so rather than creating the least common denominator for all the denominators, we're going to multiply the whole equation by the least common denominator. I'll put this over 1, and we're going to distribute that. And so I'm going to multiply them all. If you can kind of imagine the first one, right, as we start to multiply, we'll have the first one would be x times x plus 3. Let's move this up just a little bit. X times x plus 3 over 1 times x over x plus 3 plus x times x plus 3 over 1 times 1 over x, and that equals x times x plus 3 over 1, and then that multiplied by 3 over x. Now if you notice, each pairing of fractions, as they're multiplied together, we should be able to reduce something. So the x plus 3's reduce here. Over here the x's reduce, and also over here the x's reduce. And so when we write our equation now, we'll have x times x, which is x squared, plus x plus 3 times 1 is just x plus 3, and that equals, and then x plus 3 times 3 is 3x plus 9. And now you have a quadratic equation that hopefully we should be able to solve. So we'll set it equal to 0. I'll subtract 3x and 9 minus 3x minus 9. I'll have x squared minus 2x minus 6. And that equals 0. You could try to factor it, but it's not going to work. So I'm going to choose to use the completing the square method to solve this. You can use the quadratic formula if you want, but I think completing the square is faster. So x squared minus 2x, minus 2x plus a blank equals, and I add that 6 over, so 6 plus a blank. What goes in the blank? 1. And so then I can factor that to be x minus 1 squared equals 7. I'm going to square root. And so I have x minus 1 equals plus or minus 7, square root of 7, excuse me. And then x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 7. And if you go back and remember, we said that x can't equal 3 or negative 3 and x can't equal 0. And so we're okay. There's our answer. So when you look at it, multiplying by the least common denominator, what it'll do for you is it will get rid of all the fractions. And so you can have just an equation without fractions that you can solve. All right, have a great day.